Hey, you. Yeah, I'm talking to you. I see you made it. Since you're here now, can you do me a favor real quick? Just sit back, relax your mind, and let's get real. Imagine a space where dads could simply be. A place where dads of all ages and backgrounds talk candidly about the highs and lows of this thing called becoming and being a brother, a husband, a dad. Step into the dadsphere, where we let you into the mind of dad, the place where many unspoken thoughts, questions, and fears live rent-free forever. Yeah, you heard that right. We're actually going to let you into our innermost being. It's necessary, and it's been missing. My name is Richard Sadler, but many people call me Rich, and I am the host of the Dadsphere. On this podcast, I'll be speaking from the heart about my journey to and in fatherhood. I'll be talking with other fathers, unpacking their stories in hopes of creating a space where fathers keep it real, always. Creating a space where we lift each other up and sharpen each other in the process. Subscribe to this podcast today. Go check out the website at dadsphere.com. Go follow on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, of course, at the Dadsphere. Tap in and stay locked in as we travel through the Dadsphere. Let's get it. What's good, y'all? And welcome back to the Dadsphere. I'm so glad that you're back here again with me today. Like I always say, time is of the essence, and you could honestly be spending your 10 to 20 minutes with somewhere else or with someone else, but you chose to spend it with me, and I am honestly grateful for that. Today we'll be jumping into Becoming Dad Part 2, which is just basically journeying or talking about my journey into my second foray with fatherhood, this time with a little boy. And just, while I did have some reservations, this experience was totally opposite from that of, the first time we had gone down this road with my daughter. So it all started back in 2019. So my kids are approximately 3 years apart. But it started back in 2019, and, my wife came to me and she was wanting to, try to have another child. And I'll be honest with you, I was not 100% on board with that at first. Quite frankly, I was probably like 10% on board, and I'll give you my reason as to why I was at that point. And if you know me, I'm a very analytical person, and I tend to make very, very calculated moves and decisions. And, given my background and what I grew up in and what I came out of, I just didn't feel like at that point in time I was necessarily ready, of course, go figure, to bring another child into this world. But, my wife, she came up with some really compelling arguments, and she even enlisted the help of, some women in our life group at that point in time to, be praying that my heart be changed, as it pertained to having another child. And, she even gave me reasons like, so you're wanting to, delay having another child, simply because of finances. Don't get me wrong. Finances are huge. And I'm the guy that tends to try to think about the whole picture. And, as men and as fathers, I would think that a lot of us were trying to think that way. But I know that I can be a bit of an extremist when it comes to that. So the way I envisioned my children being spread out when I finally did have children was approximately about 5-year age difference. And, my wife, of course, hated that. I thought it was perfectly fine because, I look at myself and my older sibling and I'm like, look, we're 5 years apart and it's perfectly fine. Now, granted, the dynamic is a little different, but we are 5 years apart, and I expected my wife to be on board with that too. My train of thought behind that was like, as one is progressing through each critical stage of life, the other is not quite there yet. And by the time that older one gets through that critical stage in life, the other one, they'll be done, and then the other one will be coming through. So we would never have two in that stage. For example, we would not have two children in high school at the same time. we would not have two children in college at the same time. And on top of that, I was looking at the financial ramifications and aspects of that too. Because at one point in time, I was like, I want to be able to pay for my children if they want to go to college, should that be something they choose to do. My wife and I, we argue about this back and forth all the time. But if that's something that they choose to do, I wanted to be the guy that, could afford to send both of them to go to school, because I didn't want them to have to pick up a student loan or, something of that nature like myself and my wife had to do. So I was thinking about it that way, and it was like, we wouldn't be buying two cars at the same time. We wouldn't be paying two sets of college tuitions at the same time, or for, that matter, paying any type of tuition in those regards at the same time either. But my wife, she gave a really compelling argument. So she's like, so you're going to delay like us growing our family because of finances? She's like, because honestly, you'll get to the point where we do have a little more, and you'll probably still be saying the same thing. And when I sat back, it was like, she's right. She's absolutely right. And on top of that, I was afraid, because it was like, well, I don't know if we're going to have a girl. I don't know if we're going to have a boy. I wanted to have a boy, because I always said, I wanted a boy and a girl. I wanted the orders to be reversed. But as I indicated in the last episode, I believe God gave me just what I needed in a daughter first, because it taught me a lot of things about how I needed to love my wife, and continues to teach me that. But I couldn't guarantee what we were going to have. And as much as I wanted a little boy, having a little boy, it scared the mess out of me, because it's like, how can I be a dad? How can I be a father to a boy? Like, I'm trying to figure this thing out for a girl, and I feel like I'm getting the hang of it. And like my wife and I, we're getting to a pretty good place, in our marriage. We're at a better place at this point in time, and we're figuring out how to move along in our new normal. What is this going to look like with adding a boy to that? So eventually I gave in, and it was like, all right, let's start trying. And lo and behold, boom, it's like, as soon as I kid you not, as soon as we start trying, we're pregnant. My wife will probably kill me for saying this, but I feel like sometimes if I just look at my wife, we're just going to pop up pregnant. But that's a whole nother topic in and of itself. So we're pregnant. We found out that we're pregnant, and, we're going through the pregnancy, and the pregnancy was actually it was a pretty smooth pregnancy in comparison to that of the pregnancy with my daughter. There weren't really any concerns or any complications that we had, while my son was in the womb. So it was like everything was copacetic. But just to backtrack a little bit, when we got to 21 weeks, which is, that appointment, I think it's somewhere between 18 and 21 weeks is when you find out what the gender is going to be, if you want to know. So we did that, and we found out what we were having. And look, you would not believe it, but well, of course you believe it now, because I already told you I had a son. But that's when we found out that we were having a son. And I was ecstatic. Like, I remember being in that doctor's office when the ultrasound was being performed, and like, I jumped out of my chair and started pointing at the screen, and I was like, yeah, I got my boy. Like, I was so loud, you would have thought that the Atlanta Falcons won the Super Bowl. I mean, that's a little light humor. I'm still a little salty from the fact that the Falcons blew that Super Bowl against the Patriots a couple years back. I haven't gotten over that. I don't think I'll ever get over it, but I was that excited because we were having a boy. So once we found out that we were having a boy, we began having conversations about, well, what are we going to name this child? Previous to that, I had taken a really, really strong stance. Before my wife and I were even married, we were just dating, and we would have these conversations, and I felt this way even before we were dating, but I always had the strong stance of like, I want my child to have, my son, if I have a son, to have his own name. Like, I'm not going to give him my name. So I held that stance for a very, very long time, and we started tossing around names and what my son's name would be. And lo and behold, we get to the point where like I started thinking, it's like, well, being that I am having a son, I'm having a boy, I want his name to be significance. I want it to have significant meaning, something that he can, grow into and live up to. And it's funny because I wound up going back to my name. So my son does carry my first name. So we share the same first name. His first name is Richard, of course. And if you go look up what our first name means, it means a powerful, strong ruler or leader. And I was like, yo, like that's dope. I can rock with that. I know it's a little old school and maybe he might get teased a little bit by these kids, but older style or older fashion names are kind of coming back. They're making a comeback now. So it's like, I think I want to name him. I want to give him my first name, but I definitely want him to have a different middle name. So I tossed around, middle names, thought about it, and came to Zane because I wanted his name to flow and I wanted it to be kind of cool. So like if someone, asked him what his name was, it was like, yo, my name's Zane, Richard Zane. And, has a nice ring to it, doesn't it? But in the same fashion, like I said, I wanted his name to mean something. So, Zane means, if you look it up, a gift from God. So when you string his name together, it means a powerful, strong ruler or leader who's a gift from God. And I thought about that and I wanted my son to be that in the world. And I wanted him to live up to that. So I settled on the fact that, Talisa, this is what we are going to name him. He doesn't have to go by Richard. Like on paper, that's his government name, his government first name. We'll call him Z. We'll call him Zane. But this is what I want him to be named. And this is why. So we stuck with that. So, fast forward, we get to delivery day and, he actually came a few days early. Now that I'm thinking about it, I forget the actual due date that he was supposed to come on, the date that we had set for my wife to be induced. But he actually came, earlier than that. He came April 8th of 2020. He's a pandemic baby. If any of you have pandemic babies, you know that they are cut from a different cloth. That's a whole different breed in and of itself. That boy is something else. Let me tell you. But he came a few days early. And, I remember, us going, to the hospital and that kind of thing. And my wife, coming up, we went to go to sleep, one night and we went to go to sleep on the 12th. And, she woke us up in the middle of the night and was like, babe, we gotta go. And looking back on it, I don't even know how I remained as calm as I did. I'm usually a pretty calm guy, but I was extremely calm during this time, like overtly calm and aware. And I don't know how I maintained that composure, but I did. So, we go to the hospital and, we weren't there very long. Man, I feel like we were only there a couple hours and then my son was here. But when my son came out, this boy, I kid you not, this dude, he came out screaming, completely different experience than my daughter. I mentioned in the last podcast episode that I don't recall my daughter crying at all when she came out. Instead, I think I cried enough for everybody in that room, as I mentioned before. But when my son came out, he came out screaming. And it's 3 years later and that boy is still screaming. My family, if they're listening, they'll laugh at that because they know exactly what I'm talking about. Z he's a different breed. But he came out screaming. And I remember, like I had none of the same emotions that I had when my daughter was born. It was kind of like I was kind of stoic when, he came out. I don't know if it was the fact that like I had kind of already been here before, so I kind of knew what to expect, but or I was just, more so in shock, even though I knew that we were having a son. But it was like, wow, I really do have a son now. And I immediately started thinking, it's like, oh my God, I have a son now. Like this is real. This is a little boy. And now I have to teach this little boy, I call him my man cub. I have to teach this man cub how to be a man and what it's like to be a man. It's like I'm not just responsible for showing him what a man should look like. I have to teach him how to be one. And quite frankly, this kid, this new life that my wife and I have brought into this world, I've got to teach him in a manner that he is capable of being someone's future husband and someone's future father and a future community leader. And like it was this instant weight, unlike that I felt with my daughter. Now there was still the excitement that was masked, the fact that I was having a son, and a lot of us fathers, we do want to have a son of our own, but there was this weight, and it was like, how am I going to do this? I didn't have that blueprint, but I found myself having to, think on the teachings of my granddaddy and the teachings of some of my uncles and the teachings of some of my coaches and my godfather, and having to remind myself that, hey, just because you didn't see this consistently when you were younger, like my father was there for about the first 7-8 years of my life, and then he wasn't. But it's like I had to constantly think to myself and constantly tell myself, it's going to be different. Yes, this is going to be tough. It is not going to be easy every day. And I'm still in the very early phases of this because my son is only 3. He'll turn 4 in April of next year. But I had to, it's kind of like I had to think myself straight, or for lack of better words, because I was extremely scared and extremely nervous and overcome by those emotions, because how am I going to raise this boy to be a man? I don't know how I'm going to do that exactly. Like I'm still trying to figure out and feeling my way around what that even means and how I am to be with my wife and with my family. Not only that, I have to learn a new dynamic with my family as well, because it's no longer just my wife and my daughter now. I have this boy that I need to account for as well in the middle of a pandemic. But yeah. Oh, I just remembered I had additional fears too as well before my son actually came, which they're really important, and it goes back to me being that analytical, long-term thinker and liking to make calculated decisions. Another reason why I didn't want to have another child at that point in time before my wife was able to convince me was that I knew we were living in an apartment at that point in time. It was a very nice 2-bedroom apartment, the nicest 2-bedroom apartment that we've ever lived in, quite frankly. But I knew as soon as my son, as soon as we had that next child, or we found out that we were going to be expecting, she was going to want the bigger car and she was going to want to buy a house. And I was like, yo, we're doing a little better now, but that's a whole lot of money I don't want to be spending right now. And it's not like we got it like that. Well, of course, lo and behold, we did wind up going and purchasing that home, which actually turned out to be a pretty good decision, as it has allowed us to move to where we are now. So looking back on it, I'm grateful for it extremely. But we also wound up getting the bigger car as well. So everything that I thought was going to happen actually did happen. And I mean, it's all good and it's okay now. But I do remember being fearful and very scared, about that. So, we were only in the hospital for pandemic babies. Like that was a different time. We had to be in there no more than maybe just over 48 hours after my wife delivered, I think. So it was a completely different experience. But like when we brought this child home, I found myself thinking even more. It's like, yo, how am I going to do this? How am I going to be this boy's daddy? Because my daddy wasn't there. And like, I found that during that period of time, more so I wanted to be able to pick the phone up and call my dad and be like, Dad, how do you do this? Or like, what does this thing look like? Or how did you feel? But I couldn't. So that's why, I tell you guys that story here today is because I feel like as men, we need to have these conversations. We need to be able to come together and just be frank with one another and be like, look, this is where I'm at. This is what I'm afraid of. This is why I'm afraid. Can you impart some kind of wisdom on me? Can you help me with this? Because I don't know. And that's whether you grew up with your father in the picture or you didn't grow up with your father in the picture. I think we could all use that help. So fellas, I need y'all to do me a favor. Every time you look into your son's eyes, remember that you are responsible for shaping someone's future husband, someone's future father, and a future community leader. So govern yourselves accordingly. But also remember that you don't have to do it alone, because here in the dad sphere, we're all about creating a space where dads can simply be and sharpen each other in the process. Don't take that train of thought that I had when I found out that I was going to be a father to a son. Realize that you are not alone. We're all brothers. We all need to come together. We can all help each other, and we'll all be better. Be sure to drop a review and a rating for the show. You know, as they say in other lands and in other places, dropping a rating and a review and subscribing, of course, it helps the algorithm. So can y'all do that for me, please? And with that being said, I want y'all to know that I love y'all, and I mean that. So God bless, and I'll catch y'all next time in the Dad Sphere. I'm out. Peace.